everyone, it's Alex, and today I'm here with a book haul. This is my first of 2022, so yay! I always feel good doing unhauls because then I'm getting them off of my shelf and like making space for, I could say new books, but more realistically, just making space for the books I already own to actually go on the shelves. But I have 19 books here for y'all today to talk about that I'm getting rid of. Various ratings. I think everything I have here is 1 to 3 stars because generally anything that's 4 or 5 I just automatically keep. So yeah, let's just get into this. The first book I have is the only 1-star book of the lot, so let's purge that early. Scruples by Judith Krantz. Yeah, trash. I don't like it. Like, this has hair on it. What? Spleen. I have cats. It was described on the back as the most titillating, name-dropping, gossipy, can't put it down book of the decade. And I think that decade was the 1970s. I don't know why I bought this, because I bought this for myself. I remember buying this, but I can't fathom why I would have. It's just this like that is what it is. It's gossipy, and it's about this store, like this very high-end boutique for rich people in Beverly Hills that sells fancy dresses, and it's about the incredibly rich woman who owns the store and the dressmaker, the designer at the store, and also this other dude who works at the store and kind of runs things but also doesn't seem to do anything. And it's sort of just about the store, and I can say literally nothing positive about this book. Like, it doesn't have high ratings on Goodreads, and most of the people who did like it seemed like they liked it for the nostalgic aspect. Like, they read it when they were 12 and were like, haha, so scandalous because there's sex in this book and I'm 12. And like, that's probably the only positive I could see someone having from this. I don't know. I can't fathom why anyone would enjoy this, but like, more power to you. I'll put it in a little free library and maybe someone else will enjoy it more than me. I feel like it would be difficult to enjoy it less. I have 2 Lisa Gardner books, Alone and Hide. I only buy Lisa Gardner books now because I've read all the ones that my library has, and now if I want to read the rest of her backlog, I have to buy them. So I buy them cheap and used, knowing that like I will be unhauling them. Alone I read recently and gave it 2 stars. It's about this sniper who shoots an abusive husband when he has a gun pointed at his wife, and then it's sort of like, did the wife set up the situation in order to get her husband killed? The world may never know. Hide I actually read a long time ago, and same main character actually. They're both Bobby Dodge, and she hasn't written a lot of Bobby Dodge books. But Hide is about a stalker. A woman's family has been in hiding for like a really long time, and they're always on the run and changing their names, and like she never fully understands why, I think. Or maybe she's keeping that secret too, but then it turns out she has like a super creepy stalker. And I originally kept this book. I should put it in the front. I originally kept this. I gave it 3 stars because it was like super creepy. Like, it creeped me out so much. Like, I had trouble sleeping for like a week after I read this. Like, that's a good thriller. But at the same time, story, plot, character were kind of mediocre. Like, they were fine. Like, I would recommend this one. Wouldn't recommend Alone. But if you like creepy stalkery books, you could check out Hide. And I don't think you'd be that disappointed. I thought it was a decent book. I was gonna keep it because like, so creepy. Like, that's definitely in its favor, but also I read it like, I don't know how long ago, maybe a couple years, and to be honest, I haven't thought about it since, and I'm never gonna read it again. So yeah, my best friend reads these, so I might see if she owns either of these. I might try to give them to her next time I see her. But when she's watching this video, text me if you want these. But yeah, like, Lisa Gardner's fine. It's just that like, when I buy her books, I never expect to want to keep them because they tend to be like one-time reads for me. I enjoy the experience, but I'm not gonna return. So yeah, pass them along, someone else can enjoy them. Another daughter, another thriller, Only Daughter by Anna Snoekstra. I keep saying Snoekstra because I keep misplacing the E in her name, but it's Snoekstra, I think. This was very mediocre. I gave it 2 stars. It's about a girl who takes the place of a girl who went missing like 10 years before as a teenager. Now, like, she's in her 20s and she's pretending to be this missing girl. You know from the beginning that it's not, so that's not a spoiler. And then there's like basically the whole mystery is what happened to the original missing girl. And, you know, the family might not be all that it seems. Like, the killer or whatever might be closer to home than you think. Pretty generic plot. I've seen it in like every cop show I've ever watched at least once. This book was nothing. I wouldn't recommend it. Animal abuse kind of was the final thing for me that kind of just took it over the edge, that I was just like, nope, I'm out. Because, like, after just such a generic, kind of crappy story, ending it with animal abuse the way that it did just kind of left such a bitter taste in my mouth. So, purge it. Never think about it again. To be honest, I haven't thought about it since I did the wrap-up, which I think was December. I don't know at this point. Yeah. The Finishing School by Joanna Goodman. Just talked about this in my recent wrap-up. This was weird. Somewhat historical fiction. It's about like a fancy boarding school set in the 90s. I gave it 2 stars. Basically, the main character's best friend falls off a ledge, goes into a persistent, almost vegetative state. She's like technically awake, but in that way that like she can't really talk. They don't know how much she's aware of whatever. She can't really move. Yeah. It's mostly just about the main character desperately wanting to have children, being unable to have children, and then she takes the frozen eggs of said best friend in the vegetative state in order to conceive children. It's weird. It's so weird. Like, I thought it was just gonna be, like, generic thrillery. You know, like, well, I thought it was a murder, because it kind of implies it's gonna be a murder, but then it turns out Bestie's alive. Yeah. It was mostly just about, like, the child bearing. That was a weird way to say that, but I couldn't think of words. Yeah, it's mostly just about her wanting to have kids desperately, and that's, like, 80% of the story, and then also in the background there's kind of murdery things happening, and why are these murdery things happening? Who knows? No one really cares either, so, huzzah. I really liked her other books, so it's weird how much I dislike this one. I was expecting to really love it, because The Home for Unwanted Girls was the first book of Joanna Goodman's that I read, and that was so good. Like, it was about a teenage girl who has to give her daughter up for adoption because, like, she's 15, you know, and her parents disapprove of her relationship, and it's kind of about the mother and the daughter it grows up in an orphanage that becomes an insane asylum and is labeled like mentally ill or like deficient or whatever the terminology was at the time. I think it's like 50s maybe. It's something like that, set in Canada. And like, so good, so fascinating, like, great story. And then this was just like, what is even going on? Kind of painful, if I'm being perfectly honest. I didn't like it. I truly can't understand why anyone would like this, but yeah, it's going away. Maybe someone will find it, because I ditched these books in Little Free Library, so like, maybe someone will find it and think it's fantastic. I don't know. The Forever War by Joe Haldeman. Not gonna hit myself in the face with it. I should hold these by the side, not the bottom. Classic sci-fi written in the 70s. I hated the writing style. It's like an allegory of Vietnam, except they're fighting aliens, but like, it's an allegory for Vietnam, which tells you everything you need to know about the plot. I feel like it's mostly about time dilation, and like, it takes place over like 1,000 years or something, and you kind of see Earth changing in the background and like society changing in the background, and like the long form of this war by this dude who's like the only person who's been in the war since the beginning, basically, because he was conscripted in the 90s when the war started. I hated the writing style. Everything is like background to this. Like, everything happens off screen, because of the time dilation, and then is later explained to the main character, which is how you, the reader, get it. And it's just like, why? Like, why are you doing this to me? Why am I suffering this way? Just like, write a story so that I'm seeing the events as they're happening, at least for like the most part. I feel like nothing happened on screen except like basic military stuff that was being explained. And then it was weirdly sexist and homophobic and like, I don't know, people love this book apparently. And I just find so little positive about it. I kind of like the romance. I think the romance, well, I think this whole thing was self-insert, but I think the romance was kind of like loosely inspired by like his long-term partner, wife, whatever. They basically had the same names and it was basically the same. I think this was just a self-insert weird thing. I don't like this. I don't understand why this is a classic. I thought it was just so poorly written. And then all like the social issues stuff was just like so poorly done as well. And it's just like, and the Vietnam allegory I've read a lot and is like very common now. Less common when this was published in the 70s, I think. But it was just so painfully shallow and like off screen, and I don't know. I didn't like it. Lots of people apparently do though, so they get to find a nice copy in a little free library. The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. This was an arc that I picked up from my old job at Barnes & Noble. 3 stars. This was fine, I guess. No, it wasn't fine. I didn't like the story or the characters. But her writing style and like the story structure was just really, really engaging. Like, I was down this whole time for this book. I thought like I was so enthralled despite the fact that I did not care in the slightest about the characters or really so much about the plot. I was just like down for the storytelling. So I do understand why people like Lisa Jewell. And I'm gonna read more Lisa Jewell. I'm gonna like actually research the next book I read by her a little bit. Like, not research. When I say research, I mean I actually plan to read the synopsis before I pick it up. And maybe try to find something that has a plot that interests me a little more. Because I literally went into this with no idea. Because like the back is all just quotes. So I just picked this up knowing that I wanted to try a Lisa Jewell book. And I think the next one I try, I'm actually going to try to pick a story that I find interesting. Because I feel like the story combined with her really engaging writing style might make me enjoy her a lot. So here's hoping. But not totally negative on that one. Because like reading that, I was like, oh yes, I do understand why people love her. I just need to find a book that I'll enjoy better. So hopefully that happens. Accused by Lisa Scottoline. More thrillers. I didn't even say what The Family Upstairs was about. It's about these 3 siblings whose parents die, and then 2 of the siblings go missing and one is a baby, and then like, why am I holding this up while I explain that? And like, it's sort of about what happened to lead up to their parents dying, because it was a weird culty thing. And then it's about like the future in which the baby is all grown up and now trying to also figure out what happened. It was like weird story, not for me. Accused by Lisa Scottoline. I have read 3 Lisa Scottoline books. I hate them all. I feel bad saying that because she's written so many books that I feel like one of them has got to be decent. But all of the ones that I've read have been trash, and I've just immediately gone to unhaul them. So, what was this one about? Oh, this is about the rich girl. She's rich and a genius, and her sister got murdered like 6 years ago, and they arrested someone who pled guilty, I think, but the sister doesn't think he did it. So she hires lawyers to investigate. And yeah, I don't like her books. I don't like her characters or her stories. So many of her stories take place in the past. So it's like there's this weird distance from the actual events of the crime. And it just seems like so few people actually still care about the crime in the context of the story as it is now. And I don't know. Like, I've definitely read books where they talk about historical crimes, and this one's only 6 years, but some of them have been much more. But I've read books where they do it well. But in Lisa Scottoline's books, they never do it well. And the characters are so unbelievably annoying. And like, one of the main characters, the main character, I should say, is a partner in this law firm, and she lacks any knowledge about the law, like wildly so. Like she's just like making these wild accusations that make no sense in context and that like don't fit with the law at all, and she's just like, screw the law, let's do our own thing. And it's like, you're a partner in this law firm. Like, I would buy it so much more if she was the receptionist at a law firm, you know, because that's kind of like the knowledge she seems to have about the law. It's so annoying. Won't be reading any more of hers. This was the last one that I owned, so it's gone, finally. I know she's a very popular author, but I just do not understand the hype at all. Like, I gave it 3 books, and to be honest, the only reason I read this one was because I already owned it. Had I not owned it, wouldn't have read it at all. Wild Princess by Mary Hart Perry. This is about Queen Victoria's daughter. So Victorian era historical fiction, very romance. I don't know if this book is technically a romance novel, just because I know the romance novel genre is like very, very specific, and like you have to hit certain things to be considered a romance novel. But if this is not, it's basically as close as you can get without technically being one. Which I didn't know going in. I thought it was going to be more like a coming of age story, because on the back it sort of implies that like she had a lot of issues when she was younger and like was very defiant and like rebellious and did things differently. And then kind of reading this was more like, she's older and married and has an affair with an American Secret Service agent. And I probably wouldn't have picked it up if I'd known how romancy it was, because it was very like swooning damsels in distress and the big manly men who come save them. And that was like 90% of the book. And then 10% of the book was like this underground rebellion to assassinate Queen Victoria. I think it might have been Irish. I don't even remember. It basically just existed so that the male love interest at the end could like be the big hero and save the day. I'm sure you would enjoy this more if you like historical fiction romances like this. I do not. It's not my genre of book. And had I realized that's kind of what this was, I just wouldn't have picked it up. But I didn't think it was a great book anyway, but it's so hard to talk about something that's just wildly out of your genre and interest, so not for me. Maybe for someone else. The Color of Our Sky by Amita Trasi. Part historical fiction novel, part Indian culture, part friendship. This is about a girl who was set to be a sex slave at a temple, and then she escapes and becomes kind of half servant, half foster kid of this family. And then she gets kidnapped one day, and the father and the daughter of the family decide to move to America. And then like 15 years later, the daughter goes back searching for her missing friend and to find out what really happened. Great story, great plot, but the writing on this was so rough. It just let it down. Like, it was just not a well-written book, which is so disappointing because I just desperately wanted to love this. And I keep trying to convince myself that I liked it more than I did, but it wasn't really all that good. It deals a lot with like the caste system and the friendship slash kind of siblinghood between these two girls, and it's very sad, very tragic, but it's all told like from the girls in the future, so you get like this massive distance between the events. Like, the girls themselves in the narration are like, well, this was a really sad event, but I have healed over the course of my life. And I'm like, that's not what I want when I'm reading it. I want to like experience it and like experience that trauma almost, and like feel the emotions that they're feeling in the moment. And like, you really couldn't do that at all with this book. And the pacing was so wildly off, and like, I don't know, I didn't really like it. Unfortunate. But yeah. 3 Hours in Paris by Cara Black, another arc that I got from Barnes & Noble. Lots of trash arcs that I got from them, which is kind of disappointing because some of them sounded really good. This is about an American woman who's married to, was he British? Was he Welsh? I don't remember. They lived in the UK with their daughter, and then her husband and daughter were killed, and she becomes a British spy. And she goes to Paris in order to assassinate Hitler. Because Hitler apparently made like one visit to Paris, stayed there for 3 hours, and then never went back. and that's kind of what this book was inspired by and based on. That's apparently true, according to the author at least. I didn't really care to research it. This is just like the most boring thing. Like, it's a huge melodramatic spy drama, but it's so dull. The entire book is just, she shot at Hitler and then ran, and then one of the Nazis, who happens to be a police officer, is trying to track her down, and she's running and he's tracking, and she's still running, he's still tracking, and then the book goes on and she's running and he's tracking, and that is the entirety of this book. It takes place in like the 36 hours after that event of her attempting to shoot Hitler, and like the whole book is told within those 36 hours, and it's just her running away from the Nazi who's tracking her, and that is the entire book, and it's so dull, and like there are no other characters, no other like serious things going on really. It's just that. Like, that is not enough to carry a book. It was so dull. It reminded me of 24 a little bit, just like worse, but in that way that like where they were trying to cram so many dramatic events unrealistically into this time, where it's like you can't drive across the city and have it only be like 20 minutes later. Like, that's not possible. But yeah, I didn't really like this one. I was not impressed. I don't need to say that I didn't really like these, because like they're here, aren't they? That kind of implies I didn't like them. Sold on a Monday by Kristina McMorris. I gave this 3 stars. This was fine. I don't remember. My ratings don't really matter for this video. I didn't like any of these, so like, take it as you will. This was fine. It was mostly just that I was really interested. It's about the Great Depression. This reporter takes a picture of 2 children who have a sign that says 2 children for sale, and they're being sold by their parents, and it sort of follows him, and I was very interested in the children and their story, and they are not characters in this book at all. They're in that one scene, never return, and much as I tried, I really couldn't get over that, because I so desperately wanted to know more about the children and why their parents were selling them and what happened. And instead, we're following this reporter who like is doing pretty well for himself. It's the Great Depression, but like he's covering his rent fine and like buying himself food and saving money, and like, I don't know, it wasn't what I picked up this book for, and I found his character somewhat annoying, and I didn't like the romance that was featured pretty heavily. I didn't feel any chemistry between them. It was kind of just like a, why, you know? Like, this is probably a decent book. Like, I can see why people like it. I was just super bummed because I picked it up because I wanted to read about the children, and there is literally nothing about the children. So, Ice Princess by Camilla Lackberg. This is another thriller. Perhaps the last thriller. No, there are 2 more. Everything I have here is thrillers. Every time I do an Unhaul video, I'm like, I need to stop buying thrillers, because all I do is unhaul them after reading them. I rarely keep thrillers. This is Swedish. It's about a woman who returns to her hometown and sort of finds the body of her best friend. She's like the second person on the scene, so it bugs me that they're like, she found the body. Like, no. The friend's caretaker found her body and then came and told her because he didn't know what to do. I mean, not in like a criminal way, just in like he ran out into the street and she happened to be there. That's such a minor thing. It just bugs me that everyone kept saying she found the body when she literally didn't. I don't even remember this, which probably tells you all you need to know. The dead best friend's name is Alex, and they kept alternating between Alex and Alexandra, which bugged me, like, eternally. That irritated me so much. And then it was just, like, weird, I think. There were negative things going on. I didn't like her writing style. She felt kind of judgy. Like, there was a point where she was talking about suicide and needing, like, inner strength to commit suicide, and, like, the dead friend didn't have that, so it had to have been murder. And I was like, that's weird and not how that works. And then there was another time where she was talking about, like, writing, because the main character is an author, and she was like, well, I'm not a real author because all I write is nonfiction. And I was like, that is incredibly judgy to have the narrative of this fiction. I don't know, it didn't come across as like the character, it came across as kind of the author being judgy. I wasn't a fan. I mean, those are all minor things. I can't remember my major issues with this book. I don't think I thought it was well written, but it doesn't matter. I didn't really like it. Oh, no, the big thing. I just remembered, and I was like, I gotta talk about that, because that was, like, a big thing. The, the mystery, as the main character is solving the mystery and uncovering clues, it doesn't actually tell you, the reader, what clues she's uncovering. Like, she'll listen to a voicemail and be like, oh my god, I know who that person is. I know who she was having the affair with. And it won't tell you who was on the voicemail or what they said for like another 50 pages. And it's like, why? Like, it's a thriller. Is that not the point of a thriller? To follow the main character as she uncovers the mystery? Like, why am I not allowed in on this information? It bugged me so much. So that's annoying. I've never read a thriller that did that before, and I hope I never read one again. I like how I was just like, I don't remember why I didn't like this, but it was bad, and then all of a sudden I got very emotional there. Like, I just forgot. Falling Leaves by Adeline Yen Ma. This was a memoir. I think I gave it 3 stars. It was fine. It was very dry, and it read more like an autobiography. Like, she was kind of dryly covering all the events of her life, instead of, like, memoirs tend to be very focused on, like, specific events and emotions. And it was all about her family and the abuse she suffered at the hands of her very rich father and stepmother. But I didn't feel a whole lot of emotion reading this, which is what I want from a book like this. I want to feel it and experience it there. And it was kind of like a little dry. Like, I don't know, it wasn't bad. I wouldn't say don't read it, you know, like, this one of those books that was interesting. And she has some about, like, Chinese history and culture, which was interesting, because I think she was born in, like, the 40s or late 30s in China, so, like, just by nature, talking about her family, she's talking about the culture and history of China. But, like, that wasn't what the book was about. That was kind of the only part that interested me. Her writing style wasn't close enough or emotional enough to really capture the rest of the story to make me feel what I wanted to feel, which, disappointing. But I don't know, not a bad book. It's just not one I felt like keeping, really. I think I gave it like 3 stars. I think that one really was fine. It was just like, I don't really feel the need to have it around. Girls Like Us by Rachel Lloyd. This was also nonfiction, part memoir, part about her nonprofit that she runs called Gems, trying to help sex workers, mostly underage girls who've been trafficked. I don't remember if I gave this 2 or 3 stars. I didn't like the way it was structured. It was kind of like 1/3 her memoir, 1/3 about her nonprofit, and then like 1/3 general information and statistics about sex trafficking. And it was all kind of jumbled together, and it didn't feel like there was anything that really took precedence. And I feel like this book needed to focus on one topic and use the other 2 as supporting. I would have liked to know a lot more about her nonprofit, personally, but it just felt like there was nothing that really carried this book, and it needed something. I also disagreed with some of her views on sex trafficking, which didn't matter so much because mostly this book was about underage girls, but she did like comment on like adult sex workers a lot, and like in ways I didn't necessarily agree with, because she didn't think there was something as like consensual sex work, which is where I disagree with her. But just in general, like, this was fine for information if you're interested in learning about sex trafficking, but I feel like there's much better out there. I think it was fine, though. I don't keep books for being fine, apparently. After Anna by Alex Lake. I didn't like this. It's a thriller. It's another thriller. I only have one left after this. This is about a girl, like a 6-year-old, who goes missing, and the mother is trying to track her down, and then once the girl's returned, apparently that's when the real nightmare begins. But that's not till like halfway through the book, which bugged me, because the whole synopsis is like, her daughter's kidnapped, but when she's returned, the real nightmare begins. And it's like, okay, like, so I was waiting for the daughter to be returned for like the main story to begin, but then it kind of turned out that that was like halfway through the book, which, I don't know, bugged me a little bit, just in the way like I experienced it differently, because that's what I was told to expect. And then it just like, it made me cringe a lot, like not in like a bad writing way, but just in like the actions the characters were doing were like secondhand embarrassment to me a little bit, and like cringe in that feeling. So I didn't like it. It wasn't for me. But this is one of those that, like, I feel like I'll put it in a little free library and someone will like it. Because, you know, not the book for me, but not a bad book by any means. Nonfiction, Come Back by Claire Fontaine and Mia Fontaine. This is a memoir written by mother and daughter about the daughter's issues as a teenager, drug addiction, and just like general a lot of behavioral issues. She was running away a lot, doing drugs, lots of issues. So the mother sent her away to this like school in I think the Czech Republic. It's like a boot camp school to like help kids with behavioral issues. It seemed very abusive from the way they described it, even though they kept being like, no, it was a great place, it was wonderful, no abuse at all. I was like, this seems abusive to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems abusive to me. And the school was also shut down for child abuse issues, which seemed like, I don't know. But it was mostly written by the mother. Like, the daughter's perspective was there, but it seemed like it was only there because it was necessary to publish the book. And the mother was incredibly judgmental. Like, at different points called her daughter a slut and a bitch as, like, a young teenager. And, like, just so many, like, other judgmental things. And, like, didn't want her to go to public school because all the girls at public school were like tramps and gangbangers. And I was just like, why? Like, she's talking about children. She just seemed like a horrible, judgmental person. I was like, no wonder your daughter has issues. And she talked so long about how her daughter was so happy and like had a great life and was charmed and smart and amazing and had no reason to be unhappy. And then she went into all the horrific sexual abuse her daughter experienced at the hands of her father, and I was like, what do you mean she's not been in therapy for this? Like, I don't know, it pissed me off so much. Like, more the mother than the daughter. Again, the daughter had very little to do with this book, just like minimal daughter perspective in here, which was what I was kind of more interested in anyway. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend this. I'm glad that they appear to have been helped by that school, but it seemed very abusive to me. So purging this one, maybe someone else will get something from it, but I hope it doesn't inspire anyone to send their kids to places like that. Last thriller, second to last book, If You Knew My Sister by Michelle Adams. This is about a girl whose sister is very clearly a psychopath. Her mother has died and her sister gets in contact with her. She was given away as a young child. She doesn't understand why her parents gave her away and kept her sister. Her sister is very clearly a psychopath. This isn't like explicitly stated from the beginning, but like it's obvious from the beginning. And the whole point of the book is that her parents sent her away because her sister's a psychopath, which is just like the most obvious thing. Like, I don't even feel bad saying that because, like, from the first interaction you see with her sister's clearly a psychopath, and she basically says it herself several times. And she's so like, but why would my parents have sent me away? Like, to protect you, you dumb girl. Yeah, I didn't like this. This was an arc back in the day. It's been out for a long time. I didn't like it. I didn't think it was very good. I also don't have anything to say about it because it's like, it was a mediocre thriller. Like, what am I supposed to say here? I don't have thoughts on it. If I had thoughts on it, I probably would have kept it. And the last book, Children of Nazis by Tania Crasnianski. I wanted to love this. This is a nonfiction book about the children of like high-level, high-profile Nazis. Like, who? Not Hitler, obviously. I'm blanking. Himmler, Mengele, Göring. Like, all the Nazis that you know and hate and learn about in school. It's about their children and, like, what happened to them and, like, their experiences during the war and, like, all of that, which sounds fascinating because there aren't books like this and you're like, wow, that seems like it'd make a really great book. And then you read it and you realize the reason there are not books like this is because there's no information. Like, there was not enough information to carry this book, which was the most disappointing thing, because it was just nothing. Like, I think it averaged out to be like 20 or 25 pages per kid, and like half of that was spent talking about their father and what their father did, and like who their father was during the war. And it was like, if you looked up their father's Wikipedia pages and then read the personal information section, you would probably get 90% of the information from this book. Like, that's just what this book is. And I hated that, because like, it was just such a bad way to write a book. I feel like this is one of those books that, like, at a point she should have just given up and realized, like, there's not enough information, let me go write a novel. Because like, that's why there are novels about this topic and not actual nonfiction accounts. Because like, most of their children led very private lives. Like, she only actually was able to interview one of the children, which like, that chapter was the most interesting, because like, she had actual insights from the kid himself. But like, the rest of it was just whatever basic information she could find, which was not very much. So yeah, like, it bugged me so much, because it was like, just give up, you know? Like, just give up, stop trying to write this book, and go write a novel based on this topic, because like, interesting topic, it just wasn't like a book. So that was all 19 books that I'm unhauling this spring. I feel like that's good. I'll be taking them to a little free library shortly. That won't be in this video, obviously. This is already like 40 minutes of raw footage. But let me know down below if you've read any of these, if you like these, if I'm terrible for unhauling them. Largely, I think people just won't care, though, because I don't think any of these books are all that popular, except for Lisa Jewell and the Forever War. I don't understand how my opinion is unpopular about the Forever War, because it just seemed like the most trash of books. It just seems so bad. Like, why would people like that? I don't understand, but apparently it is a classic. So yeah, let me know down below if you have any thoughts on these books, and as always, thank y'all so much for watching, and I will see y'all again soon.